Welcome to our third Lunch and Learn program of this semester. My name is Roger Narlock, and I'm director of the Benedictine Institute. And today we have a special treat for you. This was actually a couple years in the making, so to speak, because we had this scheduled to do, I think it was our March or April event of the spring of COVID. And so we had it all scheduled, and so hopefully Tim has updated your gig a little bit since then. Okay. We have with us today Tim Ternes, who is director of the St. John's Bible, the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library programming, and the curator of the John Hassler Sculpture Garden. Tim has a master's degree in education from St. Mary's University in Winona. He began working at St. John's University in 2004 and has served as director of the St. John's Bible and the HMML programming since 2008. Prior to working at St. John's, Tim had a career as an elementary school teacher in St. Cloud for 15 years. In his role as Bible director here, he worked closely with the artistic team for the project, facilitating planning, exhibitions, programming, and the curation and care of the original folios of the Bible. And this included designing and creating the St. John's Bible Gallery in Elcoin Library. Tim travels extensively throughout the United States, Canada, and the UK, offering presentations and educational programs for the St. John's Bible and museum collections. Before he stopped counting, he says, a couple of years ago, he had done 8,000 presentations on the St. John's Bible. In short, Tim is the keeper of the pages and the keeper of the stories. And today, he will talk to us especially about Benedictine connections and imagery and things like that within the Bible and the whole Bible project. So, Tim.
Good morning, everyone. You heard my job title? When I got the last part added to it, I got a call from HR and said, do you know that you officially have the longest job title at St. John's University? So I'm waiting for someone to take that mantle from me as well. So as you heard, I was an elementary classroom teacher for 15 years in St. Cloud. Absolutely loved it. I have to be honest, I don't miss it, but I did absolutely love it as well. And I was teaching school and doing playground duty one day, and 5 months later, I found myself giving a lecture at the Library of Congress and thought, wow. Life had changed. The behaviors had not changed, but life had changed all the way around as well. So it's been a good time being here. I have some great colleagues. Some of them are here as well. And I have the privilege of being this thing called the director of the St. John's Bible and taking this thing throughout the world and representing that. Something you see every day when you walk on this campus. You can't ignore it. It's there. It's there all the time. May God be glorified in everything we do. Simple as that. And the St. John's Bible, in my opinion, is one of the best embodiments of that we have. Because, yes, the place and we embody that, but the St. John's Bible leaves the campus. The St. John's Bible goes throughout the world and represents that. And that's why we're here today, to talk about this, to see how that Benedictine tradition, how that Benedictine heritage shaped the project from its very foundations and to how it leaves and goes throughout the world. Now, just for those of you who might have forgotten, the St. John's Bible. Why is it here, number one? Why is it even here? Well, many people don't realize that, first of all, the St. John's Bible was not something we ever thought about doing, ever wanted to do, and we'll never do it again, okay? It's one of those things, had we known then what we know now, we never would have done it. And it wasn't our idea. It's the idea, let's see here, is this working? Well, I guess we'll use this. Maybe not. Well, we've stopped working here. There we go. It was the idea of this man right here. And I put his name up there in case you don't know it because everyone thinks it's a picture of me. Okay? The man is 85 years old. Don't know how I feel about that. But this is Donald It's the shared body trait that we have here. The St. John's Bible was his idea. But did you ever wonder why here? He could have gone any place in the world. Well, Donald Jackson, one of the world's foremost calligraphers, chose St. John's to bring to life his childhood dream. He dreamed of doing this Bible. Honestly, he dreamed of handwriting a Bible when he was a teenager. And he had to find a partner for it. But why did he choose us? Well, it goes right back to that first thing you see on the campus. May everything we do be glorified. But what convinced him was something that showed him exactly how we think. When Donald Jackson came to the campus in 1981, he got an indoctrination in Benedictine values and Benedictine heritage. And what do you think he saw that convinced him we would understand doing something as ridiculous as handwriting a Bible in the 21st century? I mean, think about it. You can go to any hotel room, open a drawer, and get a free copy of the Bible. Why would we make another one? What did he see? I'm asking you. You thought, I'm just going to talk to you. You're going to talk to me as much as I am to you today. So, what did he see? What embodies who we are? What do you think? Pardon? Very much so. He saw you, number one. Donald describes this, he said, hospitality is almost like an illness at St. John's. It's almost like a virus. But he also saw something else. When he came to campus, he saw that. Now think about that. We walk by it all the time. But let's stop and think about this church. What did this say to Donald Jackson in 1981? Now think about it. In 1981, this church was 20 years old. It was designed and built in the 1950s at a time when every Catholic church in the world looked like every Catholic church in the world. Think about that. That was a Catholic church. And this one opened up, and wow. What does this say about the people who commissioned it? Yeah, very much so. Everything about this building says it's communal. This was one of the first Catholic churches built in the world where it wasn't about the building being the church, but the fact that when the church arrives, it's the people that's there. So yes, it's about community. What else does this big concrete structure say? They built it in the 50s. What else does it say? By the way, very much so. I remember, I remember my family members coming and looking at this, and I had some real traditionalists saying, that's not a Catholic church. That's a Protestant church. It's the first thing they thought of. How dare you have such wild ideas? What else does this building say about the people who built it? You're exactly right. So we have welcome, we have forward-thinking ideas, and we have something that's got longevity in it. And Donald Jackson said, I stood in the middle of this building in 1981 and looked around, and that is exactly what I thought. He said, these guys get it. They understand all those things, and anyone who would design this church and commission this church in the 1950s would understand something as ridiculous as handwriting a Bible in the 21st century. And he said, that's where I finally said, this is where it's going to be. So it's our very Benedictine tradition, our very Benedictine way of thinking said, all of a sudden, as Donald said, he had concrete proof as to how we think. Think about that. And he said, and here we are. As Donald looked at this, he said, that's what we're going to do. And these values, these words, became the St. John's Bible. As we unpack these very Benedictine values, let's see how they fit into the story of how we made this thing and how we make it to make sure it's going to last a long time, still have some longevity in its thought. It's going to be so forward-thinking that in 500 years from now, people are going to look at it and say, wow, not what were they thinking? And at the same time, it's going to allow people into it with more than just one idea. So even beginning at this very beginning, when you made the thing, even from the very foundation of how it was put together, they went back to its roots. Benedictines for centuries have been making books, and every single thing they chose to make the St. John's Bible, from the beautiful calfskin vellum, cow skins. The St. John's Bible is written on cow skins. And before anyone gets mad at me, we didn't kill a bunch of baby cows for the Bible. We don't have a herd hidden behind the Abbey Church branded Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and so on, okay? That was a good joke. Come on, folks. Jeez, I'm working hard up here. Okay. these cow skins, the same thing that parts of the Dead Sea Scrolls are written on. And they weren't taken very good care of. And they lasted for 2,000 years. To the beautiful Chinese black inks that are actually made of soot from burning candles. And they chose soot because soot doesn't fade. And those black letters will be around for centuries. In 2,000 years, they'll be as black then as they are today. To the tools, they used a turkey, swan, and goose feather to write the words. Not because they couldn't afford a modern pen, but because the tool became an extension of their own fingers. In fact, all the materials, the way this thing was made, were designed to make sure that this lasts for centuries. Go over to the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library, go to Himmel and look in the cases. I can show you books that are 900 years old, made the exact same way, and they weren't in a museum for 900 years, they were used. And they're as beautiful today as they were centuries ago. In fact, everything they did, every method they used, if we could bring back a modern or a medieval calligrapher, if we could bring back a medieval artist, here's a wonderful old a picture of a medieval monastery writing books. If we could bring any of those back to life, they would recognize absolutely every single thing we did. I love this image because look, they're even sitting in the exact same way. Even the materials go back to our Benedictine heritage about quality and longevity. Now, this was going to be a Bible of handwritten words, 1,120 handwritten pages. But in keeping with that idea of forward thinking, we knew that if we wanted to have the Bible last another 2,000 years, we had to get it into the modern language of the people. That did not mean a new translation. That meant the most common language we have today. Think about that. How do we get most for information today? Yes. And so this became a new visual translation. Now, let's take a look at some of this and how we can use the idea of imaging the Bible to bring forth our Benedictine tradition and values. Imaging. If you're going to make a Bible, you can't ignore the main character. So think about that. It's easy to make pictures of the Nativity. It's easy to make pictures of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. But what do you think the most difficult image in the entire book was going to be? Exactly. How do you make a picture of God? Well, let's think about that. If you're going for something that's about quality, longevity, forward thinking, and a sense of welcome, how can you make an image of God? And we're not the first to have done that. People have been imaging God for centuries. Let's take a look at a very famous one. Here is an image of creation. God the Panko creator. One of the most famous images of God, and it's about 800 years old. So turn to the person next to you and tell them, who is God based on this picture? Turn to the person next to you and tell them who is God. Okay, let's change by 400 years. Let's change 400 years and look at a new picture of God. What's happened? Not exactly right. Not much has changed in 400 years. One of my college students said, well, God obviously moved to Minnesota because now he's blonde-haired and blue-eyed, okay? So now he's there, all right. But if you take a look, the tools are the same. There's a little bit of humanism moving in there because God's now on the earth as opposed to outside the earth. In fact, for centuries, making an image of God was one of the most dangerous things you could do. In fact, how dare you make an image of God? In fact, it was so dangerous, the most common image of God was this. But what do we still know about God? By looking at this picture, what do we know about God? Pardon? Not much, but we definitely know what? Yes, just like all the rest of them, God is still a hairy old white man, okay? Yeah, exactly. We're going that way. In fact, if we go back to the oldest image of God we have on the planet, or that we think we have on the planet, one of the oldest images of God that we have found dates from the 300s. Isn't that interesting? And if we took time right now and grabbed our phones and did a Google image search and do image of God or picture of God, when you go back to your desks to do that, and I bet you'll be hard-pressed to find anything but this. Now think about that. There's not much about, and these images have served us, but there's not much about those images that are about longevity, other than the fact that they've lasted a long time, and there's not much in those images that are about welcome. So here's the question. If you're going to believe that quality, longevity, forward thinking, and welcome are part of who you are, how do you dare make a picture of God in the 21st century? How can you make a picture of God that is founded on our Benedictine values? And how can you dare make a picture of God? And how can you make a picture of God that in 500 years from now people will go, wow. So at your table, solve that question. How do you make a picture of God today? Anyone have a brilliant idea? What was interesting, I immediately saw everyone start looking down and passing the cards around. Thinking, maybe the answer's on here somewhere. It's not an easy thing to do. So what would you do? You've been hired by one of the biggest Benedictine monasteries in the world and say, we need a picture of God for the 21st century. But that's how you quiet a room down, isn't it? I mean, what do you do? Yes, thank you.
We talked about using a symbol of something instead of maybe drawing an actual person.
Okay.
So we did it further than what symbol that.
Okay. Yeah, but how do you choose a symbol? What symbol are you going to choose? Because the symbol you choose might not be the symbol that they like. Yes? Oh, yes, yes. What would those children say?
Oh, God describing you. They'll draw. We have to draw a picture of God driving a big motorcycle up the mountain.
Ah, very good, very good. I love it, I love it. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you one thing. You have to make a picture of God that also doesn't make anybody mad. Try that in the 21st century. Because if I go into a classroom today and say, okay, folks, here's God, what immediately happens? I don't have to go I can go to anywhere in the world and say, here's a picture of God, and immediately this half of the audience turns me off. And this half of the audience says, yep. And this part in the back says, that's not my picture of God. And these people over here say, I don't believe in God. So how do you make an image of God in the 21st century? Well, I think we solved it. Yes? Aha, there we go. There we go. Just change it a little bit. What color is the hand? What gender is the hand? Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Yeah, you think about that. I'm picking on you in the back of the row there. But you can see it's not easy. Well, here is the solution, or a Benedictine solution. So here is God in the 3rd century, or God in the 5th century, or God in the 18th century, and so on and so on. But now, here is St. John's image of creation with God. Turn to the person next to you and tell them what strikes you immediately. So do you see the creation story? Do you see the creation story there? Yeah, I mean, it's a literal telling of the creation story. You can tell there's one slice for each day. You've got darkness and chaos. You've got the Big Bang Theory there. You've got, the sun and the moon. You've got all those good things. But where is your picture of God? Well, what is the one thing we know from Scripture about the image of God? Yeah, so there's something. Is there anything that's everywhere in this picture? What else do we know from Scripture about the image of God? Yeah. What else do we know from Scripture about the image of God? Yes. Yeah, Deidre. We were made in the image of God. Now there is where we can hang our hat. How can we make an image of God that is quality, that's going to have some longevity, that's going to be radically forward-thinking, but also be welcoming? You said God was everywhere. Look at this image. Is there anything that is in every stripe? Yes, look, the gold. In particular, do you see the tiny gold squares? Turn to the person next to you and tell them everything that those gold squares do. What do they do in that artwork? It is fun always watching an audience talk about this because suddenly we have a bunch of choir directors in the audience. Because you start doing this. I saw someone go like this. I saw someone go like this. And I saw someone go like this. The gold squares, and because we're in a large group, here are the words I overheard. Connect, count. Someone said triangle. Someone said grow. And also someone said they continue on. Creation's not done. But how do those gold squares help us with an image of God? Yes. In the St. John's Bible, we don't make a picture of God, but we show you God's presence. And we use 24-karat gold to represent God. And we polish the gold. So what's going to happen when you look at the St. John's Bible? Yes, when you look at the Bible, you're going to see yourself. And as you said, Deidre, Scripture says we're all made in the image and likeness of God. So now when you look at this, you will see the presence of God, which we carry with us every single day, staring back at you. And if you're standing there looking at it with your best friend, you're of course going to see your best friend in that reflection as well. And then this obnoxious idiot you can't stand looks over your shoulder. Oh yes, Benedictine hospitality says, I must be welcoming to even those people. Now, that's an image of God that is about quality, longevity, forward thinking, and welcome. And how can you be mad at your own face? Think about that. So, let's take that, and how would you apply that to this? Now, the minute you saw that word, I bet every one of you went to this. Okay? In fact, you can't have a nativity unless you have what? What's the purpose of the nativity? Yeah, you got to have a baby Jesus, and I bet you'll be unpacking your baby Jesus in a few weeks, all right? Well, how can you make an image of the nativity in a Benedictine fashion? What would be the most strange, radical idea you could possibly do in a modern nativity? Come on, what would you think? If a nativity, to be a nativity, you have to have baby Jesus. Well, what if you leave out Jesus? Here's our nativity. What strikes you? The gold. So, where's the Christ child? Yes, the Christ child is in the reflection in us. Because the incarnation is the past, the present, and the future. And here we are looking at ourselves staring back. We are part of that incarnation. And that is something that's going to, so in 500 years, when people look at that, they'll see the presence of Christ. They should see that which is still there. Yes, way in the back. Oh, that's a great, I've never had that comment, but what do you think of that comment? Is it too opulent? Oh, okay. It's also it's one of our few stable elements. It doesn't change over time. But if that question comes up, what do? Talk about it. And you know what? We hadn't thought about that. Well, maybe we'll tarnish some of the gold in the future or something. I don't know. But that's the kind of thing that we want. We want someone to look at this and say, huh, what about this? Yeah. Well, you know what? The Bible, by its very nature, is communal. Every single way this was made was communal. You know what? We probably don't even know who came up with the actual idea because it was a communal process. But it was from the very beginning when you look at old notes and when you look at things. And Linda, you could probably answer that question because Linda Orzechowski sat on all the meetings and took all the notes and wrote everything down copiously. And I bet it was hard to even trace where an idea came from. But that's the beauty of it, because it's communal. So here we have that presence of God reflected in us. Well, then how do we picture wisdom? If you're going to make a picture of wisdom, can you predict now, based on everything you just heard, what are you going to see? How do you see wisdom? Answer that at your table. And when the artists and theologians saw wisdom, here is what they saw. Here is wisdom. Now, just continue your conversation. What strikes you? How is that wisdom, and what do you notice? Do you see anything right away that strikes you? Whose wisdom? Yes, life experience is wisdom. Who else is wisdom? Whose wisdom? What's it look like? What's it look like? Yes, it looks like a hand mirror. And if you get real close, our wonderful wisdom that has seen everything, she looks backwards, she looks sideways, she's seen it all. She's got images of the cosmos all around her from the Hubble Space Telescope. But surrounding her are 27 phases of the moon, all made of polished silver and platinum, platinum and gold. So what are you going to see? Yourself. Because you, of course, are also the face of wisdom. Equality, longevity, a sense of welcome and inclusion, but also forward thinking, were things that defined every single element that we did. Just like when they built the church, it represented the communal nature of the place. And of course, all this happened, and the whole St. John's Bible couldn't have been possible without the most basic and the most important of all Benedictine traditions, the committee. There they are, okay? These are the 12 theologians and scholars and people that worked together, and they worked to have a conversation with every single one of the artists. Because one of the foundations of Benedictine values is the idea of listening, and listening to each other, and that's what they did. The Bible, by its very nature, is communal. They talked about the passages, and then they visually brainstormed, how do we image God today? And collectively, they came up with the idea. Once they were able to say, you know what, these ideas are theologically and artistically sound, then they could do them on vellum. That's why almost every artwork took between 4 to 8 months, times 160 artworks. You can see why this took almost 15 years to do. And you've heard this phrase over and over again when you come around the campus. Because not only does the artwork reflect the Benedictine values, but they also wanted to give it a real sense of here. And that's how it was done centuries ago. When a manuscript was commissioned by a wealthy individual, the artist would weave in things that represented where the commissioner lived. That's why, on the page of the St. John's Bible, we have the plants and animals of central Minnesota all over the pages. You'll see the beautiful milkweed and butterfly. You'll see elegant pages, page after page of these butterflies you would swear they killed and glued on the page. They're so realistically done. Here's a close-up of that monarch, and look at that detail. In the real one, it's almost as if you could pet it. Those all came from our campus. In fact, a natural history artist by the name of Chris Tomlin spent weeks here chasing butterflies and squirrels and birds, and then he would paint them. And he was so talented, it was almost as if he sneezed and an artwork would appear on the page, because he would do it so quickly and so beautifully. And here is one of these dragonflies. And there is even a mosquito on one of the pages. And to tie it further into our roots, any place in Scripture where St. Benedict referenced Scripture when he wrote his rule, you will find that marked in the margins with these little tiny black crosses. Throughout the entire St. John's Bible are all these little tiny crosses, and they reference back to an RSB, or Rule of St. Benedict. And that's there so that in 1,000 years from now, if someone researched all these little black crosses, it would say, this is Benedictine. And then you add that with all the little butterflies and the goofy plants and animals, and they say, this was Central North America. But you know what? Let's take it one step further and show them exactly where this is. So in Pentecost, let's put the Johnnies at a football game at the bottom, and the Bennies. Let's put the Abbey Church from the side with all the triangles there. And there, of course, are the Bennies and Johnnies. And one of the pages on life and community, let's actually show them this place by including the bell tower and the Stella Maris Chapel. And does this artwork look like anything you've seen on campus before? It's in the same style as the Great Hall. And then let's not forget that it's not just St. John's. Let's remember, we have some partners down the road. Do you see it? The dome of St. Benedict's Monastery is tucked up, and it's in our page about the pillars of wisdom. And Donald said, you know what? Let's put something that references the wisest women we know down the road. And then, even in our image of the life of Paul's anthology, where here we have Paul. He was a world traveler, the foundation of the church, and he's standing on his boat, universal image of church, and he's surrounded with all these world-famous buildings. from different traditions and different cultures, but of course the most famous building is St. John's Men's Dormitory right there. The Stella Maris Chapel on the side, and those two little black bars, the cemetery. Yes. You will find us inside these pages as well. But in keeping with that Benedictine idea of welcome and inclusion, we remember that we're not in this alone again. Look at St. Paul. He's holding a famous building in his hand, a very famous building in his hand. Anyone recognize it? St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. But look how it's being held. It's broken in two because we are still a church divided. So acknowledging the fact that we do have other people in this journey along with us. And then, that's not a word you expect to see at the end of the presentation, is it? Yes, exactly. How do we take a Benedictine approach to hell? How can we make a picture of hell? I hope there's not a lot of gold in that one, okay? Think about that. But the focus here was, well, it's not about burning, it's not about frying, but what is hell? Absence of God, isolation, loneliness, fear. So when it came time to make an image of hell that's going to be about quality, longevity, and forward thinking, here's how it turned out. Now, this is the confession of Peter. Upon this rock I want you to build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail. You do see Christ personified in the middle, but if you look at the warm, glowing side where Peter's confession took place, do you look into it, do you see the face? Yeah, look at that face. And if you look carefully, that face, you see the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. But if you look at it also, that is the outline of the Abbey Bell banner. So you have the face of Christ in the rock of the church, or Peter in the rock of the church. We chose the best church we know, our church. Okay? And then we go to the other side, the place of, and the gates of Hades will not prevail. So here we see the word Sheol, place of the dead. But then you see images of polytheism. So worshiping many gods, the false idols, the horse's head, the idol head here, all these coming from images that are 2,000 years old. But then the committee and the artists said, how could we create a contemporary experience of hell? And there it is in the middle. Have you ever seen this before? Look. What's that look like? Anyone ever seen anything like that before? Yes, it's a disease. It's a virus. It happens to be a microscopic blow-up of a deadly pandemic virus. And how do we describe hell? Darkness, loneliness, isolation, separation from God, the exact same way many people would describe the last few years. But here, look at this. Oops. Look at the copyright date. In 2002, when they made this artwork, they said, gee, going through a pandemic outbreak would truly be an experience of hell. Not bad for forward thinking, huh? Kind of spooky as well when you think about it. And one woman last year in the gallery looked at it and she said, well, you know what? That's a virus, but that virus is actually hate, because hate spreads like a virus itself as well. So these artworks are designed to say, come together and make meaning. Talk about them with other people, because then they're going to have that idea of longevity. Before I have a closing comment, are there any quick questions? It has been 500 years. I repeat that. It's been 500 years since any community has commissioned a book like this. And we now know why, okay? We'll never do it again. But the last time this was done, the last time a book like this was commissioned, that image could never have appeared in a Bible. It couldn't have been in a handwritten Bible. And as we look at this Bible lasting 1,500 or 2,000 years, think about what those words will mean to the end of the earth. Where will this be? And as you go back to your offices, as you go back to your daily work, and you think about the St. John's Bible, you think about where you work and how you do your work, Think about how you bring each of these 4 words into your office and how you make them a reality and be an extension of that Benedictine history and heritage and take it beyond your office doors and into the community. The St. John's Bible is here. It's an international treasure. People come from around the world to stop at our gallery. I encourage you to do the same thing. If you'd like a tour, a guided tour for your department, if you'd like a guided tour or a special vault tour for your department, or just a group of colleagues, contact me. I do them all the time. I've done them for several people in here. If you want a special treat for your family, contact me. And we'll make sure that we extend that Benedictine hospitality as well. Because the legacy of the Bible won't be the fact that we made it. The legacy will be what you do with it. And that's also the Benedictine heritage. If it's going to last, it's up to you. So thank you very much for your time and interest today.
Thank you so much, Tim. Wonderful to learn about such richness that's before our eyes every day, and right down a short walk from here, and also to tie it to both who we are and what we can be. So, as Tim said, take that and go forward. The other thing I just want to leave you with is one quick reminder: is much of our programming is wrapping up for the semester. We will of course be doing much more this spring. We do have, of course, the Christmas tree lighting, which will be the day after we get back from Thanksgiving. And there'll be daily bulletin announcements about that, and that'll be in the Great Hall, of course. And then the other thing we have is our weekly building community events. So I encourage you to stop by. As we know, community is so important to the Benedictine tradition, and we can't have that community if we don't know one another. So really, this is just an opportunity to get to know each other. So 9 to 10:45 every Friday morning. Look at the daily bulletin for where it's going to be that particular Friday. This Friday, it'll be in this very room. So we welcome any and all to come and stay for as little or as long as you are able to and get to know some of the other wonderful people at this institution. With that, have a wonderful Monday.